This next movie will be addressing the banner area, and we're going to style that beginning with a tiling background for the diagonal lines, and we'll also define the size for this banner. So, as you can see in the code view, we actually do have a section here called banner. There's a div inside the banner with an ID of advert, and that's going to be for our advertisement, that little sticker that we saw earlier. We also have a div with the ID of description, and that one contains all of the H2s and paragraphs as well as the buttons. So it's this area that we're specifically concerned with. So if we go to our design view, and if we select the banner itself, notice I'm just putting my cursor in here, and then down at the bottom we're going to say div banner. If you select it like this, when you go to your CSS styles, and let's see, we don't actually have an area predefined as a banner. Now I do want it to appear generally right after the main navigation area. You might remember that main navigation area we've seen how to create inside of previous video tutorials. And in this particular instance, we are addressing the banner. So I'll create a new CSS rule. And since we selected that banner, it will show up. I want to be less specific, so it's just the banner that we're talking about here. So let's click OK. First thing, the background for this banner, I want to give it a background color. So I'm just going to come in here, and perhaps I'll just color pick the green that I have right up here in my headline. So if you press apply, you can see that, yes, now we've got a nice green background the way we want it to look. However, now we're going to address a background image. So I'm going to go and browse for a background image. And the one that we're using is this one here called BG. Small little graphic, 24 by 24, which will tile on the horizontal and vertical. So if we open that and we press apply, you can now see that we've got that color in place. So with that tiling background, again, repeating is perfectly fine in this particular instance because I want it to repeat both vertically and horizontally. The other things that I want to be doing with this at the moment is to address the height. Now the width is going to be 960 because our containing element is 960. So I don't really need to address that. However, for the height, I'm going to give it a value of 286. And the reason I'm doing so is simply because the second background image that we're going to be introducing in here, the picture of the frog, is already set to a height of 286. So I want the containing element, in this case the banner, to be 286 as well. If you press apply, you'll see that, wow, got a whole lot bigger, and that's just fine. We will address how to fix that in just a moment. Other than that, there's not really much I want to do with this banner except to give it a border radius. Now if you remember, to give it a border radius, we're going to have to do that outside of this area here. So I'll click OK, and then in this area here where it says CSS styles and the banner is in place, I'm going to add a property. And this property will be border-radius. And this border radius will be set to a value of something like 10 pixels. The only other thing we need to do is to also put in the border radius amounts for the Mozilla browsers. So I'll say -moz border radius. And I'm even going to copy border radius here by pressing Command-C or Control-C on a PC. So now that we've got the Moz border radius in place, we'll put in 10 pixel amount. We'll add another property specifically for WebKit. So -WebKit and now I'll paste in border radius. Command-V or Control-V on a PC. 10 pixel amount as well. So with that in place, won't see anything until we go to Live View. And once we are in Live View, we can see that we've got a nice rounded 10 pixel border radius here. So we've got the first tiling background in place. Next thing we want to be doing is putting in the tiling background for the frog. And in order to do that, we're going to have to implement something that's new with CSS3, and that's the ability to support more than one background image. So to introduce our second background image, we can't actually go into Dreamweaver here in the CSS styles and ask the banner to have a second background image. It's just not supported in this version of Dreamweaver. But that's okay because we're not handcuffed to this method of working in Dreamweaver. We can always go to the code. So notice I just right-clicked on banner and said go to the code. Well, if you'll notice here, we are now inside of layout.css, and here where it says banner, I want you to do a second thing. First of all, you can see that the first background image happens to be this URL with the BG-PNG, and that is quite simply the same thing that we just introduced. However, we want to have a second image. So here's what I want you to do. You can copy URL all the way up to the closing bracket, Command-C or Control-C on a PC, and I'm going to paste this right in front. Now don't worry if it goes on the second line. We can just switch to code view directly and it's all on one line. Put a comma separating those two URLs. And this is how, using CSS3, we can implement a second image. Now check this out. The second image we're looking for is one called BG-banner. And it's not a PNG, but rather it's a JPEG. So what this is going to introduce, if you go to your design view, now we have two background images, one that's underlying and the frog, which is on top. Let's go back to our code view. So what you can see here is the first image that is introduced is the one that's on top, sort of the stacking order. It's the one that's on the highest level. The ones that go after it are the ones that are underneath the images. So quite literally, you could even support more than one. However, we can see that there are some problems. While we're happy with the repetition of the diagonal tiling background, I'm not happy with the repetition of the frog. So let's do this. Press return, and we're going to introduce another background property, but this property is going to be background repeat. And much like we can support multiple background images, we can also support multiple properties for backgrounds. So for that matter, background repeat should be set to no repeat for the first image. And then I'm going to put a comma, and we're going to introduce just the regular repeat for the second image, which is the diagonal tiling background. Put in a semicolon to finish that. Let's hit return again, and the last thing I want to be dealing with is the background position. So if you come in here and click on background position, the first one, which is the frog, remember that one, right? We want that to be positioned specifically right top. Then we'll put in a comma, and now we're going to say, well, for the other graphic, the diagonal one, let's start that one left top, semicolon. So let's save this. We'll go to our design view and check it out. Beautiful. Now we have one background image, which is the frog, and the second background image, which is the tiling graphic, integrated successfully in the same banner.